Imagine for a second that you just bought this highly complex, slightly unpredictable, and completely essential piece of machinery.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. So you wouldn't just start mashing buttons and hoping for the best. I mean, you'd immediately look for the instruction manual.
You have to.
Yeah, you want to know the rules of how this thing operates so you don't accidentally, blow it up.
Right, because trial and error with something that volatile is usually a recipe for disaster. You need the schematic.
Exactly.
You have to understand the underlying mechanics before you start flipping switches.
But when it comes to the most complex, unpredictable machinery on the planet, other human beings, we usually just wing it.
Oh, totally. We absolutely do.
We mash the buttons, we argue, we demand, we accidentally blow up relationships, and then we sit back and wonder why the machine isn't working the way we want it to.
Yeah, we just end up navigating these highly sensitive networks of human ego and emotion completely blind.
Which is,
It's inefficient, and frankly, it's just exhausting.
it really is. But what if there actually was a manual? Today, we are taking a deep dive into a text that has arguably served as the ultimate instruction manual for human interaction for, well, nearly a century.
Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
That's the one. And we've pulled together a massive stack of research for you today. We've got everything from the original 1936 Wikipedia history to modern digital interpretations by Graham Mann.
Plus, we're looking at remote work strategies from Synergita and continuous improvement applications from Jumba Academy.
Yeah, and we even have an academic journal, JNAMS, analyzing its management theory, alongside this really spirited Reddit debate about its modern relevance and its flaws.
It is a fascinating cross-section of material. It really looks at the underlying psychology from historical, academic, and highly practical modern perspectives.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to decode the reality of this manual. Like, is a self-help book published in 1936 still the ultimate cheat code for human interaction?
Or does advice from the era of the Great Depression need a serious software upgrade to survive in our digital world?
Okay, let's unpack this.
No.
Because to really grasp the sheer impact of these principles, we have to look at the psychological landscape they were born into, right?
Absolutely, because it didn't start as a book and it wasn't born in a vacuum.
Right, it goes all the way back to 1912. Dale Carnegie was a former actor and salesman teaching night classes on public speaking at a YMCA in New York.
Just trying to make a living.
Yeah, he was teaching business professionals.
Yeah.
And because he was getting paid on commission, he had to deliver immediate value.
He couldn't just give them theoretical fluff.
Exactly.
Oh.
He quickly noticed that his adult students didn't just need to know how to project their voices. They desperately needed to know how to get along with their colleagues and clients without causing friction.
What's fascinating here is the timeline. I mean, if you look at the academic history of management theory at that time, the early 1900s were entirely dominated by industrial engineering.
Oh, like Frederick Taylor, right.
Yes, exactly. Taylor published Scientific Management in 1911. The entire focus of the business world was on treating humans like cogs in a machine to maximize physical output.
Just numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right. And the famous Hawthorne studies, which finally birthed the human relations movement in management by proving that people work better when they feel seen, those didn't even start until 1927.
Wow.
Yeah, so Carnegie was pioneering human-centric management 15 years before the academics even recognized it as a valid field of study.
He was teaching people how to be human, while the experts were still trying to turn them into robots.
Which is incredible.
And he taught these YMCA classes for decades, right?
Yeah.
Refining his methods in real time. Then, in 1934, this publisher, Leon Shimkin, takes the 14-week course.
And he's just completely blown away.
Totally. He secretly hires a stenographer to transcribe a lecture, hands Carnegie the transcript, and essentially begs him to turn it into a book.
But even then, the initial rollout was incredibly modest.
Oh, yeah.
When they finally published in 1936, the marketing strategy was literally just to mail 500 copies to graduates of the course as a nice refresher.
A refresher that completely exploded. They sold 250,000 copies in the first 3 months. And today, it sold over 30 million copies worldwide.
It's a phenomenon.
It is. But I have to push back here for a second.
Sure.
When you actually look at the core advice
Yeah.
in parts 1 and 2, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Give honest appreciation. Smile. Remember people's names.
The basics.
Right. Isn't a lot of this just common sense? Like, The Graham Mann source mentions that modern readers often dismiss the book initially because the rules sound almost too basic.
Yeah, that is the curse of simplicity. The principles sound like common sense when you are reading them quietly in your living room with a cup of coffee.
Right, when you're relaxed.
Exactly. But consider the reality of human neurobiology. When you are in the heat of a conflict or your ego is threatened, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, takes over.
You go into fight or flight.
Right. When we are stressed, our default biological programming is to criticize, complain, and defend our own territory. So common practice under stress is the exact opposite of common sense.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Carnegie's framework isn't really about learning new information. It is about learning how to manually override that default biological programming.
Which brings us to how we actually execute that override,
Hmm.
especially today. Like in part 1, chapter 1, the rule is literally, if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive.
Right.
If the human default is to defend our ego, the first step has to be avoiding triggering that defense in the first place. Carnegie argues that criticism is entirely futile because it puts a person on the defensive.
It immediately makes them strive to justify themselves. It is a direct assault on someone's pride.
And people hate that.
They do. And the moment you attack someone's pride, logic leaves the room. You are no longer trying to solve a business problem. You are just managing a bruised ego.
So they aren't even listening to you anymore.
No, not at all. The person you are criticizing is just cataloging reasons why you are wrong.
When I try to visualize how this plays out in modern digital communication, I think of the analogy from the Graham Mann source about invisible boomerangs.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah, it's like if you fire off a highly critical, condemning email to a coworker, the recipient's brain doesn't process it as helpful feedback. It processes the critique as a foreign pathogen.
An attack.
Right. Their psychological immune system immediately kicks in to attack the virus, which is you. They aren't absorbing your words. They're just producing antibodies to neutralize your threat. You threw the boomerang, and it just came right back and hit you in the head.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. And the digital medium exacerbates this immensely.
Because you can't see the person.
Exactly. It strips away all the softening context of human interaction. You don't have body language. You don't have a warm tone of voice. You don't have eye contact. A slightly blunt comment in person might be brushed off, but that same comment in a Slack message,
Oh, it can trigger a massive immune response.
it's huge.
Which makes the active positive behaviors even more critical, giving honest, sincere appreciation. And smiling. But how exactly do you smile digitally?
Well, remote work analysts like the folks at Synergita have been studying this heavily. They point out that a digital smile is conveyed through the tone of your writing.
Like the words you use.
Yeah, the positive words you choose to open and close an email. And yes, the careful use of emojis to clarify your intent and soften the text.
Wow, so emojis are actually a management tool now.
They really are. And remote work management strategies take this even further. When a manager needs to give constructive feedback to a remote worker, doing it purely over text is incredibly dangerous.
Because they can't hear your tone.
Right, and remote workers often already feel isolated. If they just receive a wall of text critiquing their work, they feel condemned.
So what's the solution?
Managers are strongly advised to use video calls. You need that eye contact. Your face has to convey that you are trying to help them, not attack them.
It all comes back to signaling safety, which ties into part 2 of the book, becoming genuinely interested in other people, and remembering that a person's name is the sweetest sound in any language.
Yes.
In a remote environment, asking a coworker about their life, or simply making sure to use their name instead of a generic greeting, it builds a bridge. It tells their brain, hey, I am a friend, not a threat.
And academic analyses, like the J&MS article, point out something incredible about this whole dynamic. Decades before, psychologists officially coined the term emotional intelligence in the 1990s.
Solovian Mayer, right?
Exactly. Dale Carnegie was essentially mapping its architecture in 1936. Emotional intelligence involves self-awareness, emotional regulation, empathy, and relationship management.
Okay.
When Carnegie tells you to suppress your urge to win an argument, that is advanced emotional regulation. When he tells you to genuinely see things from the other person's point of view, that is textbook empathy.
He was outlining the mechanics of emotional intelligence nearly 60 years ahead of the academic curve.
He really was.
Okay, so we've established how to signal safety, avoid triggering the ego's immune response, and become a pleasant, well-liked person.
The foundation.
Right. But what happens when you actually need someone to do something? How do you shift from just being well-liked to actually influencing behavior and leading a team.
This is where the framework transitions from social grace to strategic influence, parts 3 and 4 of the book. And the core mechanism here is completely counterintuitive to how most people naturally try to exert power.
Because the natural human default is to issue an order. But the manual says, ask questions instead of giving direct orders.
Right.
The default is to point out exactly where someone failed. The manual says, let the other person save face.
Because a direct order demands compliance, which inherently strips away the other person's autonomy.
And people hate losing their autonomy.
Exactly. When you attack someone's autonomy, you trigger resistance. But a question invites collaboration. If you ask an employee, hey, how do you think we should handle this problem? You're giving them ownership of the solution.
Well, that's smart.
People are exponentially more likely to enthusiastically execute a plan they helped create than an order that was just barked at them from above.
There are some amazing historical anecdotes in the sources that perfectly illustrate this. Like the story in part 3 about an engineer named O.L. Straub.
Oh, the rent negotiation?
Yeah. He needed his rent lowered during a tough financial period, and his landlord was notoriously ruthless and difficult.
A total nightmare by all accounts.
Right. So the normal reaction would be to storm in, complain about the exorbitant price, or threaten to move out. Instead, Straub goes in and uses what Carnegie calls a drop of honey.
He completely flips the script.
He does. He tells the landlord how much he genuinely loves the apartment and praises the incredible job the landlord does running the building. He builds the guy up, makes him feel deeply respected, and then gently explains he simply can't afford to stay.
He bypassed the landlord's defensive armor entirely.
And it worked. The famously difficult landlord actually went out of his way to lower the rent just to keep him. He aligned his need for lower rent with the landlord's desire to feel valued as a property manager.
That is the secret of Socrates right there. Then you have the story of Lord Northcliffe, the British newspaper magnate.
Oh, this one is great.
He found out a rival paper was going to publish a photo of him that he absolutely hated. If he had sent a furious legal threat demanding they stop, it would have just made the editor defensive.
And probably more determined to publish it, honestly.
Exactly. Instead, he appealed to a nobler motive. He wrote to the editor and simply said, please don't publish that picture of me. My mother doesn't like it.
That is brilliant maneuvering. He didn't make it about his own vanity or try to exert dominance. He made it about a universal, unimpeachable human value respecting a mother's feelings.
It is nearly impossible for an editor to aggressively push back against that without feeling like a villain. He shifted the entire context of the negotiation.
My favorite story regarding influence, though, comes from the modern continuous improvement models, the Gemba Academy source. It's originally a story about Charles Schwab, the steel magnate.
The chalk story.
Yes. He had a mill manager who could not get his team to meet their production quota. The manager tried coaxing, pushing, swearing, threatened to fire people, everything. Nothing worked.
Total gridlock.
So Schwab walks into the mill at the end of the day shift, asks a worker how many heats of steel they made that day, and the worker says, 6. Schwab takes a piece of chalk, writes a giant number 6 on the floor, and walks away without saying a word.
Doesn't yell, doesn't lecture.
Nope. When the night shift comes in, they ask what the 6 means. The day shift explains that the big boss was there, asked about their output, and wrote it down.
And instantly, without a single order being given, a game begins.
The night shift decides they are going to beat the day shift. By morning, they had rubbed out the 6 and written a massive 7. This completely revolutionized the mill's productivity. The principle here is about throwing down a challenge.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, academic analyses draw a direct line between this and Frederick Hertzberg's motivation hygiene theory from 1959.
Okay, how so?
Well, Hertzberg discovered that certain things in the workplace only cause dissatisfaction like harsh supervision, bad company policies, or poor physical conditions. He called those hygiene factors.
So fixing those doesn't actually make people work harder.
Crucially, no. Fixing a hygiene factor doesn't actually motivate anyone. It just makes them stop being angry. True motivation comes from intrinsic factors, achievement, recognition, and the nature of the work itself.
So the manager yelling at the workers was just a negative hygiene factor. It made them miserable, but it couldn't make them work faster.
Precisely. When Schwab wrote that number on the floor, he was bypassing the hygiene factors entirely. He was triggering an intrinsic motivator, the innate human desire to achieve, to compete, to master a task.
I do have to stop you there, though, because that seems a bit contradictory.
That was
Well, the entire framework is built on being gentle, avoiding arguments, and letting the other person save face. Doesn't creating a fierce competition between the day and night shifts inherently mean one of those shifts is going to lose?
and therefore lose face.
Right.
It sounds contradictory on the surface, but the distinction lies in the locus of control. A direct order or a harsh criticism is an external force imposed upon you. It attacks your autonomy, which forces you to lose face.
Okay.
A challenge, however, is an invitation. Schwab didn't tell the night shift they were lazy or demand they work harder. He just left a piece of data on the floor.
Ah, so it was their choice.
Exactly. The night shift chose to accept the challenge. Gamification engages our desire for mastery without triggering our defensive immune response, because the motivation originates from within the worker themselves.
The motivation has to feel like it belongs to them. That makes perfect sense. So we've explored the brilliance of the psychology, but a deep dive requires looking at the shadows, too. Is this advice always a force for good? And does it apply equally to everyone, regardless of who they are?
To understand the blind spots of the framework, we first have to look at what was actually scrubbed from the original manual.
Right, the lost chapters. The version most people read today is actually a revised edition from 1981. The publishers deleted entire sections from the 1936 text to modernize it.
Because society had changed so much.
Completely. They removed a section on writing effective business letters, and they completely axed Part 6, which was titled 7 Rules for Making Your Home Life Happier.
The marital advice simply couldn't survive the cultural shifts of the late 20th century.
It was incredibly dated. The rules included things like don't nag, don't try to make your partner over, and literally advising the reader to get a good book on the sexual side of marriage.
Wow. Yeah, very much a product of its time.
It reflected a very specific patriarchal 1930s domestic dynamic that felt entirely out of place for modern audiences.
Which leads us directly into a profound critique from our sources regarding how these rules operate across different demographics today. The Reddit debate we reviewed highlights a massive blind spot concerning gender dynamics in the workplace.
Yeah, this is a fascinating point raised by one of the users.
Yeah.
They pointed out that many of the core behaviors championed by the book avoiding arguments, using indirect criticism, asking questions instead of giving direct orders, smiling, letting others take the credit.
Right, the whole playbook.
Yeah, these are behaviors that women are often heavily socialized to do naturally from a young age anyway.
The critical issue raised is how those identical behaviors are perceived by the outside world depending on who is performing them.
Oh, this is huge.
It really is. When a male executive who culturally holds an invisible baseline of inherent authority uses indirect criticism or asks a collaborative question instead of barking an order, he is lauded for his exceptional emotional intelligence.
He's the modern empathetic boss.
Exactly. He is seen as a leader displaying kindness and restraint. People know he could command them, so his choice to be collaborative is viewed as a masterful management tactic.
But when a woman in the workplace performs those exact same behaviors, asking questions, avoiding direct confrontation, ensuring everyone else saves face, she's frequently penalized for it.
Right.
She isn't praised for her restraint. She is often perceived as being meek, lacking authority, or simply not being confident enough to lead.
The framework assumes a baseline of authority and respect that the user already possesses. It doesn't account for the fact that marginalized groups might actually need to learn how to be direct and unapologetic just to establish their presence.
Instead of constantly learning how to soften their approach.
Right. It is essentially a tool designed for someone who already has a comfortable seat at the table, teaching them how not to alienate everyone else in the room.
That is a crucial piece of context.
Yeah.
And speaking of context, we have to address the ultimate dark side of this methodology.
The manipulation aspect.
Yeah, because while you have people like billionaire Warren Buffett, who proudly displays his Dale Carnegie course diploma in his office, or actress Donna Reed, who credited the book with her success.
Both incredible success stories.
For sure. But these exact same principles have been utilized for incredibly nefarious purposes.
Tools of psychological influence are inherently morally neutral. Understanding how the human brain works doesn't make you a good person. It just makes you an effective one.
And this knowledge has certainly been weaponized. Sinclair Lewis, the famous satirical writer, launched a scathing critique of the book shortly after it was published in 1937.
What did he say?
He argued that it was just teaching people to smile and bob and pretend to be interested in other people's hobbies,
Hmm.
precisely so that you may screw things out of them.
Ouch. But he wasn't entirely wrong about how it can be used.
No, he wasn't. It has been used in desperate situations, too. Like in 1998, LDS missionaries who were kidnapped in Saratov, Russia, utilized these strategies to try and gain leniency and survive their captors.
A harrowing application of emotional intelligence for pure survival.
But then you look at Charles Manson. The research notes that Manson extensively studied how to win friends and influence people while he was in prison.
Which is terrifying.
It is. He took the principles of making people feel important, arousing an eager want, and offering appreciation, and he used them to flawlessly manipulate his vulnerable followers into committing horrific murders on his behalf.
This raises an important question about the fundamental tension of this entire deep dive, the question of intent versus mechanism.
Right.
Are these principles simply a collection of psychological exploits, a way to hack the human ego to extract what you want? Or are they a genuine framework for building authentic connection?
I mean, Carnegie said you have to be sincere.
He does. The text explicitly states that these techniques only work if they are applied with absolute sincerity, warning that false flattery will eventually backfire. But the chilling reality is that a skilled manipulator can perfectly mimic sincerity.
Manson certainly.
Exactly. The manual gives you the schematic for the human mind, but it cannot dictate the morality of the engineer.
So what does this all mean? We've traveled from a YMCA classroom in 1912 to Charles Schwab's steel mills, through the intricacies of remote video calls and into the dark psychology of manipulation.
It's been a journey.
The ultimate takeaway is that technical skills, no matter what field you're in, are never really enough. To succeed, you need to understand the underlying mechanics of human emotion.
You need human engineering.
Exactly. Whether you're trying to implement a new software system, negotiate a lease, or just survive a tense family dinner, focusing on the other person's deeper needs rather than your own ego is the real secret to moving the world.
It requires a fundamental shift from a self-centric worldview to an other-centric worldview. The machinery of human interaction runs entirely on the fuel of validation, autonomy, and respect.
And when you deprive people of that fuel,
Through constant criticism and demands, the machine just grinds to a halt, but when you provide it, the friction disappears.
So here is a challenge for you. The next time you are online or at work and you feel that overwhelming biological urge to defend your ego, to win an argument in the comments or issue a harsh critique or point out exactly why someone is dead wrong, just pause.
Take a breath.
Yeah. Try to manually override that default setting. See if you can find a way to let that other person save face instead. Test the machinery for yourself.
And as you test it, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we have spent this deep dive analyzing how effectively these principles can bypass human defenses and influence behavior, right?
Yeah.
In the 1930s, this was a manual for salesmen. Today, we are entering an era where artificial intelligence and social algorithms are analyzing billions of data points on human interaction.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
What happens when those algorithms are fully optimized using this exact psychological playbook? Will our devices and digital assistants soon be flawlessly mirroring our interests, remembering our names, and perfectly appealing to our nobler motives?
Just to win our friendship.
And influence our behavior without us ever realizing the manual is being used on us?
Man, if the complex human machinery can be successfully hacked by a simple framework from 1936, the algorithms of tomorrow won't even have to break a sweat.
They really won't.
It's certainly something to keep in mind the next time your feed seems to know exactly what you want to hear. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of the human ego, history, and the hidden mechanics of connection. Keep questioning the world around you, keep exploring those different perspectives, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.